Could you explain who you are, where you're from?
Well, my name's Victor Hunter, and I'm from the Kimberley regions in WA, around the Broome, Derby, Fitzroy Crossing area as the main areas, and up the Dampier Peninsula is where I do a lot of my work. And it's mainly with the Aboriginal communities, looking at how we can get them to be starting to do things for themselves.
So you've been involved a lot in construction, particularly, haven't you?
In the construction and trying to get them to, trying to get people, regardless of what gender or what age, and doing things for themselves. And we've been building in, the last building we did was in Super Adobe, and but there was a lot of skills transfer involved in that, from when we got them to make scale models out of flour and water, and then when they went to do the layout with the flour on the ground to show where the doors were. And one of the interesting things that happened there was that they didn't like inside entry for the toilets, so they themselves chose to have the entry for the houses, for the toilets, from outside. And they were also very much concerned about mother-in-law avoidance. So there was talk about having the ablutions at either end of the building. And the other thing was an outdoor kitchen area. And they were very taken with the fact that the house had a earth floor, and because of the orientation of the house, and because it was built out of super adobe houses, sausage bays, and the house doesn't require any air conditioning, and it's got all the cooling, and they really enjoy it. And the interesting thing about the patriarch of the community is that he invites people who visit there to go in and take their shoes off and feel the coolness of the floor.
So once you got the house designed, you had people building. How was it getting people involved in the building training?
Well, we were hoping that there'd be someone in the community who'd be in charge of organising the workers to come along and work, and that was what we saw as a problem, because they left that to the project manager and the architect. But in our other job projects, we've had that initially, and that there's a education process where those it is made very clear, and it's mainly the grandmothers that I find are best to work with, because when you don't ask them about what they can do for themselves, they're always thinking what they can do for their grandchildren, and that is a very interesting aspect when working with the grandmothers, because they're always concerned, the grandmothers that I come in contact with, about what happens with the grandchildren and what can happen so that it can make a better environment, world, and that for the grandchildren.
And so how were the grandmothers in getting people along? How did they go?
Well, I found them very interested in what was going to happen and with the project, and also the welfare of the grandchildren. And this is something that I've sort of learnt from those projects, the importance of working with the grandmothers.
And so if you come in fresh to a community and you don't know many people, if you get grandmothers involved, or what, you do your best, should you feel responsible if people don't turn up for training or for construction? Or
the other interesting thing I've found is that when you go to a community where there's people have never had any projects to get involved with, and it's sort of like a first time for them, and they don't have they've never had a work ethic, they've never had role models. Well, in that case, every endeavour is made to get people from one family group to work on a project. So you might have 2 or 3 projects going at once, but each project is where the grandmother is had as a the go-to person, and I see that they're put on a retainer and they paid to actually be that and value that person, and they organise their family, because if there's any arguments, it's that old adage, you can pick your friend but you can't pick your family. And so if you had people from all different groups and then there was an argument, they'd all go home and you wouldn't have your workers. And that's the key to having family members working on a project.
Yeah, now I've got the same experience. So any other ideas for people coming to a community, how to prepare themselves to be better prepared?
The projects have got to be as short, and the people who are working on the project have got to know how long the job's going to take, when it's going to finish, and there's got to be allowances for job sharing, and the people have got to understand that and be involved in the discussions about that. And there's also have got to be time, like sometimes if you're on a project and there's a big fire somewhere, well, people know that there's going to be guannas and that running around, so down tools and they go and chase bush tucker. But it's fitting in with that, and also there has to be incentives and rewards. One of the things that I saw as a reward was taking women shopping and getting their hair done. You know, whether the friend hairdresser came in, and the other thing is using money from a project to take people away to see a booked for the grand final, so they know that there is an incentive for them staying on the job. Because what I found is that if you've got people working on a job and they're having to turn up and that, they tell you about the other communities where people are getting the same work for the dollar money as them, but they're not working. And they know what everybody else is doing. So you've got to be conscious of that. And a lot of photos of mileposts and that, and now with the what we call the fish house, they're very keen to show people around and tell people about it.
So share knowledge through the community to other communities. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, the idea, I like the idea of taking photos, because that involves a lot of other skills. People who aren't necessarily on the construction can get involved and make a commentary. And
well, the young people show their mates and see, one of the interesting things when in the setting out of the house, right? When they were up, the young people were asked, "Do you like school?" "No, I don't." And then when they were involved in doing the design and the setting out of the house on the ground with the flour and doing the lines for the footings and all that, and we said to them, so you don't like maths. No, I don't. And I said, you know, you were doing Pythagoras' theorem when they're doing the setting out. And so they thought that was quite funny.
That it was really that simple. Yeah. It's involved in everything we do.
Yeah. So that's the thing that, and see that getting them to understand that maths just wasn't in the classroom, that it had a practical use outside of the classroom, and setting out of the house pad was a good example, and you know, and you're talking to them about the when you put the pitch on the roof, you know, here, once again you're using maths in terms of the rules of 1, 2, 3 and 3, 4, 5, and this is where they can sort of see that they then sort of see the connect, because you're talking to them about where maths has come in useful, you know, and the same with when they're using a level and straight edge and all of these sort of things. So it's because we had students from the school come, and one of the things that we endeavoured to do was not just include the children or the teenagers who weren't showing any interest in school, but also the ones that were showing an interest, to try and reward the positive rather than here we are, we're rewarding the negative. And some of the parents and kids of who were attending school and all that, they say, well, why can't we go? And so that's where you're trying to strike a balance.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, any more advice you got? Or?
Well, I just think if you get the right grandmothers, you're guaranteed that they're going to do the work, and they've got a lot of information that they can. So if you start all your sentences off when you're talking to them, can you help me? Will you help me? Rather than going in and thinking that you're the one that has got all the answers and that you can help people in the community. Whereas, because if you think about it, Aboriginal people are an industry, and they generate so much money for other people, and people don't think they've got something to offer, but they know about the association of weather and the bush tucker and everything like that, and because no one asks them for information, no one asks them for help, well, they don't provide it. And that's, everybody goes in there thinking that, oh, we're going to help these people, never thinking that those people have information and a source of a lot of places and that are beneficial to the student or anyone who's working in the area of Aboriginal affairs.